Hi, welcome back to another video. So as you would have seen from the title and the thumbnail, I will be reading romance books for Valentine's Day. I think this is the first time I'm actually filming this video. I've always wanted to do it for years, but I always didn't have the time to read the books and film a video before Valentine's Day. But this year, there was the opportunity and I was like, why not? Let's just do it, right? So obviously I'm pre-filming this, but it's always a good time to read romance. I'll be reading 5 romance books for Valentine's Day. Let me just introduce the 4 physical books that I have and then the other digital copy, which I haven't decided just yet. So we have The Off-Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. All of these physical copies are kindly gifted to me by Times Reads, by the way, which thank you very much. They are all books that I want to read, which is very, very exciting. So the first book is The Off-Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is the author of When in Rome, Practice Makes Perfect. She recently came out with Beg, Borrow or Steal. This one I think is one of her older titles, but I'm super excited nonetheless. I love Sarah Adams. She instantly became a favorite author of mine after I read that series of hers, and I'm excited for this one too. Quite excitingly, this is the revised and expanded edition. I didn't know there was a edition. I don't know what prompted there to be a revised and expanded edition. Next book is The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. This book, I didn't really know about this until it came out everywhere last year. People were reading this and I was like, oh, this sounds very, very interesting. It is a Good Morning America book club pick. GMA book club pick, yes, which is quite exciting. And next we have Knives, Seasoning and a Dash of Love by Katrina Kwan. Again, a book that I didn't know about until I saw people reading it on my Instagram. And it's so cute, like look at the cover. Kind of reminds me of The Love Hypothesis because both covers are blue. I feel like they are the same shade, but yeah. This one is about 2 chefs, which is like, oh my gosh, I love reading about chefs and food. And it's a spicy workplace romance. So yeah, very excited for this one. One of my friends on Instagram loved this book, so I'm very excited for this. Last but not least of the physical books, we have A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. Ashley Poston is also one of my favorite romance authors who wrote The 7-Year Slip and The Dead Romantics, which I both really enjoyed. This one I heard like not super good things about, but I am still intrigued. It was one of my anticipated releases of 2024. And last but not least, I'm considering between Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon or Malai by Liz Tomford. I will decide for the digital copies like a little later on, but the way that I'm going to read these books is I decided to go by Goodreads rating from the lowest to the highest. And so the first book that I have already started is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, and I'm listening to the audiobook and reading along with the physical book. And in this story, we follow Eileen Merriweather, who is en route to her annual book club retreat. Some things happen with the book club members such that she's alone this year, but she still wants to go there because she needs to be there. She wants to drink wine and read all the spicy romances when her car breaks down. And then she finds herself in this small town called Elorton, a town where every meat is cute, the rain always comes in the afternoon, and the bookshop is always curated with impeccable taste. Elorton is actually the setting of her favorite romance series by her favorite author. And it's like very interesting, right? Like Ashley Poston has always had super intriguing romance book premises. Like in The Dead Romantics, it's like a ghost, and then The 7-Year Slip is like time travel romance, and then this one is like going into a fictional town. So it's like, I haven't read the reviews on this book yet on why it's not as loved as her other works, but so far I'm really enjoying it. Like the audiobook is really good. I love the audiobook narrator, and so far where I am at, I'm like this far in, 116 pages. Our main character has just discovered that she's in Elorton, so she's like trying to deal with that, and then in a fit of excitement trying to visit every part of the town because it's like literally her favorite book setting. Yeah, like that's about it. And I really love the premise because it's like, oh my goodness, imagine you get to go into the setting of your favorite book and you get to meet the characters. Like they might not be as exactly how you imagine them, but they are physically before you. It's so cool. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'll come back to update when I have more thoughts on this or when I have finished this book. Hi, I'm back because I finished A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I needed to come on to share my thoughts with you. So trigger warnings first: grief, sexual content, death, car accident, alcohol, cursing, vomit, and infidelity. She's in her favorite book series, Town, and she's like kind of stranded there when her car breaks down, and she meets all the favorite characters of her favorite series, and also like a particular character. She's a grumpy bookstore owner. Towards the end, I can kind of sense why there might be frustration people face when reading this novel, because I also faced slight frustration with the female main character, which I will elaborate more on later, but also the fact that the chemistry between the two of them, I feel like it's also just okay. A lot of people say that they don't really get why they fall in love with each other, and I kind of get that. It was kind of like a grumpy sunshine, but also don't really like each other towards like being okay with each other and then eventually liking each other. It wasn't really, tension wasn't really super high. Back to my frustration with our main character, Eileen or Elsie. Being in your favorite book series is such a dream, right? But her excitement isn't really over the top. You know, she was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna check out everything. A calm reaction. And also, I need to really talk about spoilers to elaborate, but because of these issues, I decided to give it 3.5. Like, I still enjoyed it. It's like an okay, good read, but I wouldn't say I particularly like it or particularly hate it. Okay, let's talk about spoilers. And when she first finds out that she's in Elorton, Anders, who is the bookstore owner, also knows this. Like, he's beside her, and then he's like, that's the reality, and it's like she knows that he knows as well that they're in a book setting, which under normal circumstances you would be very like, you have had so many questions for the bookstore owner, right? You want to ask him like, oh, how do you know this? Like, why do you know this? That kind of thing. She doesn't, and then she just lets it go, and then the story just continues. Similarly, another time she followed him to this courtyard because he was making a phone call, and then normally in town she doesn't get service because they're in a fictional town, but in that courtyard she suddenly got service. So then, knowing that clue, you would want to go back and get service again, or even ask Anders like, why do you need to go to this courtyard to get service when she believes that he is fictional? So he would have like service everywhere, but she doesn't, and it just gets rolled over again until we find out everything at the end, which I was like, this doesn't really make sense. Like, why? Either she's I don't know what we're supposed to believe. Like, is she just a very gullible character that just discovers everything like about things only at the end, or what? But kind of frustrated me because we could have gotten the answers a lot sooner. But yeah, I did like her personal growth in this though, because at the start she was feels like she's left behind because her best friend is getting married and they were supposed to do everything together, but end up her ex just walked out on her with another girl. But eventually she comes to understand that, you know, everyone has their different paths. You don't really need to know what the answer is, you just need to enjoy the journey, things like that. Mainly, this was a good book, just that I felt disappointed because I felt like with this premise, there was a lot more potential than what was actually executed. I want to read you my favorite quotes though. I tapped 2 times in this book. So first is, there was a scene wherein she fell asleep in his arms while he was reading a book. And then when she woke up here, she was like, oh, I need to get off. But he pulled her back into his arms and he was like, oh no, I'm just getting to the good part. It's very cute. And the next thing is this large dialogue that Anders said to Elsie. I could serenade you with words. If I was a poet, I could liken love to your eyes. If I was a gardener, I could plant a kiss on all the places you despise on yourself. If I was a writer, I could write epics to your lovely lips. If I was a painter, I could explore every bend and curve, so when my eyes failed me, I would paint you by memory. Romantic. But that was the only most romantic thing, like most romantic out of 2 things, because the rest is just like, yeah. And that's all for this book. I have started very much still at the beginning of The Off-Limits Rule by Sarah Adams, and I'll save my comments for later, but it's kind of cringe. You can obviously tell that Sarah Adams wrote this before she wrote When in Rome, Practice Makes Perfect, because I think it's so cringy, and the main characters are like 29 and 30 something. She has a son, a 4-year-old toddler, and she's acting like she's a teenager. I'll read you all the cringy dialogues next clip. But yeah, that's all for now. Hi! Let's address the elephant in the room. Yeah, I got my hair dyed yesterday. First time ever dyeing my hair that is not brown, and second time professionally. I also did my nails. I'm coming to update because I just finished The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. Still coughing. But okay, talk about trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for body shaming, pregnancy, medical content, toxic relationship, sexual content, gaslighting, vomit, alcohol, and cursing. This story is about our main character Lucy, who is a 29-year-old with a 4-year-old toddler. I think I kind of roughly mentioned the two characters, but not the storyline. Basically, she failed to succeed as a single mom and she's back home moving in with her older brother Drew. She has a great support system at home, but she wanted to be independent and be able to do it in life as a single mom without support. So when she has to move back, she feels like she's a failure and she's like moping and everything. But her brother is the sweetest guy who dragged her out of her moping state and was like, okay, come, you need to go to the river with me. You're gonna go boat riding or something like that. He brought his friend along also called Cooper, and he's a hot guy apparently. So Drew sees Cooper as like a playboy for the 1 year that he's known him. So when he first introduces her to Lucy, he was telling Cooper to stay away from his baby sister, but both of them are kind of drawn to each other. This one, I get why there is a revised and expanded edition now, because I happened to see like the edition before it was revised and there were a lot of cheesy writings in it, and some of it is still in here, just that I guess it's more toned down. So for example, the original edition had a lot of caps and like very cheesy phrases that has since been removed. For example, let me read to you some of the cheesy quotes, okay? So these are all the tabs for the cheesiness, and they don't really feel like they're 29-year-old and like 30-something. This 29-year-old mum, at the thought of Cooper finding another lady sexy, makes her stomp the ground, making one loud bam so that Cooper looks back at her. A 29-year-old stomping her feet. Oh my god, I couldn't believe it when I read it, okay? 29. Her character is kind of like this awkward girl, like very shy and everything. But this just screams childish instead of the shy, socially awkward girl. Another one. Okay. So the original version uses a lot of caps until it's too much, you know? So in the revised edition, all the caps, like most of them have been replaced as italics instead, which I think it's a better way of writing than all caps, because all caps just gives me like teenager vibes, like the teenager awkward vibes, but she's 29. Before she was introduced to Cooper, she was like trying to think of a nickname for him. So she was like, Cooper. 29-year-old guys, oh my god. And then, so she's staying with her brother. Her brother like very kindly offered her a place to stay, and she judges him for playing video games. Like she was like, have fun playing that little 12-year-old boy's game. Like, people who are adults can play video games too, you know. This is a good quote that I'll share later. But yes, she has a friend who is also pregnant currently, and she called her pregnant sucker in all caps. And it's so like, this happened because she was asking her for advice on how to send text messages without seeming too desperate, and then she proceeds to ignore all the advice and just reply instantly anyway and calls her friend a pregnant sucker. Girl, what are you doing? Another one, okay, they officially called it the Off Limits Rule, right? And then they talk about it very like, okay, tomorrow night we get a break from our Off Limits Rule. All other times, no touching. Deal. And it's like, and then she randomly blurts out the most random things, like, I'm wearing hideous underwear. It's giving like the pick-me girl vibes, like the not like other girls vibes, which is like, you can portray awkwardness but not in such a cheesy and weird manner, you know. Okay, last one is, I didn't really sit well with how Cooper first got Lucy's number. He texted himself from her phone, and the original phrasing was, I'm texting myself from your phone so that I can have your number. And then the revised edition is, I'm texting myself from your phone so you can have my number. You know, the token flirt and all that winky face. Both editions, I still don't see how it's like a not creepy thing to do, because it's like she's only okay with it because she's like kind of interested in him, and also because he's conventionally attractive. In all other cases, a red flag, which I don't see how this can still be excused, you know. So Yeah, it didn't sit right with me. And one last good thing, the only good thing quote that I highlighted is she has a job as a hairstylist, and both characters say that it's just a job that they like, but it will never be what fills me up, and I'm okay with that. I don't think everyone is meant to have a career that changes the world. Sometimes you've just got to pay the bills and then clock out so you can get to the life you love most, which for me is being with Levi, which is her son. Everything else I thought it was just okay. I didn't really feel the chemistry. It was kind of very instant, like love at first sight. It didn't really give me any feels. So I decided to give it 2.25 stars. Definitely you can tell that this is one of Sarah Adams' earlier works, because this author wrote When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect, which is like my favorite romances. Yeah, so it's interesting to see the progression from like this to that, you know. I definitely won't be continuing this series because I cannot deal with the writing in this. But yeah, I would prefer a novel love story than this one. Next, we are going to be reading Knives, Seasoning, and a Dash of Love. So excited to start this, and I'll come back and update. I wanted to talk about one last thing, is that the whole premise of the off-limits rule was because the brother didn't want them to be together, and then a lot of the comments were saying how he literally doesn't have the right because they are both adults close to their 30s already, or in their 30s. With regards to that, I don't really have a stance because I get both sides. Like, one is that they're both adults, his opinion doesn't matter, and the other side is that he is the reason that they are introduced to each other in the first place, and I get that sometimes they just want proper like acceptance, so I don't really have an opinion of that. Hi! I finally finished another book, so I'm here to update. Here I think my hair looks more like brown now rather than red, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I think it's probably time to use my red hair shampoo. But okay, anyway, so I finished Knives, Seasoning, and a Dash of Love by Katrina Kwan, and I mostly read this book through physical, ebook, and audiobook, so it's like all the different modes combined. And let's talk about it. Let's talk trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for abandonment, sexual content, racism, car accident, cursing, and pregnancy, as well as minor sexism. So in this story, we follow Alexander Chen, who is one of the most talented chefs to ever grace the culinary world of French cuisine, and he rules his kitchen with an iron fist and a fiery temper. He's like kind of Gordon Ramsay kind of style, the way that he runs his kitchen, and he's Chinese American, so he has had a lot to prove in the culinary world, being Asian and all that, but he wasn't always like this. Our female main character, Eden, who is his newly hired sous chef, who embellished her resume to get the job, knew him back when he still went by his real name, Shang, and he used to be sweet and helpful and definitely like not who he is now. So she's like, what happened to you? Like, who are you and what do you do with Shang, right? It's kind of like their relationship as they progress, as well as like a lot of focus on the food as well, because they are working in the kitchen together. Oh, this plot is so... I can understand why the book is so long, because you have this whole like, I'm mean to everyone but you trope, grumpy sunshine trope, and there's a lot of things going on as well, like the fact that he's Asian American and has had to deal with racism in the culinary industry, and also the fact that Eden is a female chef, but like people can be quite sexist, especially in these kinds of mostly men industries. There's also a lot of drama that happens in the kitchen, as well as the fact that, okay, Eden is looking for... Okay, I can't tell if this is for the spoiler warning then. She has been saving money to try and hire a private investigator because she lost contact with her parents when she was young, and so she wants to hire a private investigator, but that costs a lot of money to try and find back her parents and have some closure, like, you know, like what happened all those years ago, and she needs answers. So it's a lot of different kinds of things happening in this story. Very, very steamy, like, oh my gosh, it kind of felt they warmed up to each other quite quickly, I would say, and afterwards it became very like lust filled. Yeah, but okay, I would have to say that Alexander, also known as Shang, is a very sweet male main character. Like, I think he's very acts of service kind of guy. For example, right, her rubber band breaks and then he's like there with a rubber elastic and then he's tying her hair for her. And then, I don't know, he's also like gift giving. He wants to spoil her with everything. He is more well off than Eden. Eden is kind of like strapped for cash because she's saving every bit that she has. So he's like wanting to spend everything. Every time they go out to buy groceries or whatever, he will buy everything. And then there was once she was on her period and he went to buy everything, like tampons, pads, I think some kind of food, everything, okay? yeah, he's a very sweet guy. Like, and then there's a period in this where Eden was going through a tough time. She was like, just go away. And he was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna be here with you. I'm gonna be with you through the tough time. You're not getting rid of me. You know, it's like ideal boyfriend, right? But he's not like that with everyone else. Like, with everyone else, he has this like very tough facade. He's very strict and really Gordon Ramsay style. Like Gordon Ramsay in the kitchen versus Gordon Ramsay with children or his kids and things like that. I would say that, I don't know if it's because I took a little while to get through the whole thing. The front part, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a favorite. The middle part, I was like, okay. Like, it's kind of like okay still. Then towards the end, it was like, yeah, it's still okay. It wasn't a favorite, but I would still recommend it. Overall, I gave it 4 stars. It has a very long ending, I would say. There's like an epilogue, and then a 1 year later epilogue, and then a 5 years later epilogue. Crazy. But yeah, it feels like a very complete story, but kind of extended in the way that, you know, when you watch K-dramas, you have 16 episodes. This one feels like a 32 episodes kind of drama because there's a lot happening. But the storyline itself is kind of predictable, which was why I wasn't really getting the feels, plus the fact that they softened to each other quite quickly when I felt like we could have spent more time on the angst and the yearning, like the grumpy sunshine thing, you know. So yeah, and really last. So it's like I wasn't really feeling the chemistry, I was feeling more of the sexual chemistry. Yeah. So in the end, I decided to land on 4 stars, and I would say out of the 3 books so far, I enjoyed this the most, but it's still not at 5-star feeling yet. So I don't know, maybe it's because I'm reading so many romances lately, I'm getting more strict. But yeah, anyway, the next book that I'm going to be reading, which I haven't started yet, is See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I wanted to borrow Today, Tonight, Tomorrow, but I couldn't find it at the library, but I found this instead, which I was like, okay, sure. It has a higher rating than this one, Life Seasoning and a Dash of Love. Anyway, so I will be reading this one next, and then yeah, update you when I'm somewhat into the book. This is more of a YA though, so we shall see how that fares. And yeah. Okay, hi. I'm here to close out the video because I have since finished the last 2 books that I'll be reading for this video. So let's talk about the next book first, which I think I mentioned that I'll be reading is See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This one is like a romance among university students, in that our female main character, who is known as Barrett Bloom, she is hoping that college will be a fresh start after her messy high school experience. But when school starts on September 21st, everything goes wrong. She can't switch out of her Physics 101 class even after being humiliated by the awkward guy sitting beside her. She botches her interview for the college paper, and she decides to crash a frat party and accidentally sets the place on fire, panics and flees, and falls asleep on a couch in the common room. The next morning, she finds herself back in her dorm room bed, and it's September 21st again. But after a confrontation with the guy from her physics class, she learns that she's not alone and that he's been trapped for months. So this storyline kind of reminded me of the other book by Lynn Painter. It reminded me of The Do-Over by Lynn Painter, because that one also kind of follows like Groundhog's Day kind of plot, and she's reliving Valentine's Day over and over again. But this one is a little longer than the other book, and it deals more with the time loop things. And because they're in physics class, the guy is a physics student, they do a lot more of the science of it as well, and it's kind of complex to try to understand. Trigger warnings for bullying, panic attacks or disorders, car accident, sexual content, addiction, sexual harassment, drug abuse, fat phobia, and alcohol. Yes, one thing that I liked about this was that it follows a plus size main character. I don't know if that's how they describe it these days, but yeah, sometimes when fat characters are in books, authors tend to overplay it a lot, like keep talking about how they're fat and everything. But I liked that this book didn't really overplay it. It just gets mentioned slightly here and there, but not overly so. I felt that this book was too long for my taste. Like, look at the size of it. I felt like they could have repeated the same day lesser, and the story would still have been able to flow. So it kind of bored me a little, but I liked the slow burn of them slowly getting together and them slowly uncovering the mystery of how they can possibly go back or like move forward to the next day. Yes, I also really liked that apart from the romance, there was also this subplot of how like I mentioned, she had a very horrible high school experience, and her best friend or like her closest friend kind of turned on her, or like they kind of fell apart, and so somehow they end up as roommates again back in college, and so they kind of slowly get to talk about what happened between them in high school, and their friendship slowly develops from there. And I really liked that subplot, and I wanted more of it because I felt like that could have been a good plot to follow, because for these kinds of Groundhog Day kind of plot, you have to do something such that you will be able to go back or move forward, right? And I felt like that would have been a good one to follow, if that makes sense. I think that's kind of spoilers, so spoiler warnings. But yeah, overall I gave this 3.25 stars, and yeah, it was an okay read. I didn't really enjoy this to the point that I love it, but it's an okay read. Yeah. And okay, the last book of this video that I read is The Love of My Afterlife, and I actually was really reminded of Ashley Parsons' books while I was reading this. Let's talk about trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for death, bullying, car accident, sexual content, abandonment, grief, blood, panic attacks, disorders, and dementia. I also think the female main character in this was slightly like thicker. Like, it's not outwardly mentioned, but they talk about how she has like muffin love handles or muffin tops or something like that, and she was like saying some other people like me thicker or whatever. So yeah, but what the plot of this is that our main character, the female main character, she is called Delphi, and she has lived a very mundane and monotonous life. She actually choked on a microwavable burger such that she finds herself with her afterlife therapist. So she's telling her that you're dead, I'm here to help you deal with what just happened, things like that. And then somehow something happens and she sees another person that was in the space. They had an instant connection, and so she believes that he's her soulmate. Turns out the guy was sent there by accident, so he's not supposed to be dead, and so he gets sent back to Earth. And so Delphi was like, I need to go back as well, like I cannot die like this. And so she strikes a deal with her afterlife therapist called Merit to go back for 10 days under a contract. She needs to find that guy because she only knows his first name. Find him, get him to kiss her voluntarily, and if not, she will have to come back and be with Merit like forever until Merit decides that she doesn't need her anymore, something like that. So she goes back and goes on this quest to find that guy, and along the way a lot of things happen and the story develops from there. This one really reminded me of Ashley Parsons' books because Ashley Parsons' books also have these kind of like paranormal kind of elements to it, so I was reminded of that. But this one definitely is more British, like audiobook is British narrator and the characters are in London as well. Somehow, I don't know if I vibe well with British books because the accent was throwing me off, and also the fact that sometimes with British writers they tend to use terms that are different from Americans, and then they kind of have this discussion about, oh, like what do you Americans like to call it or whatever, and it's always in the books, and this happened as well. And another thing was that I can't tell if it's because the audiobook narration was like that, but the writing itself was also like, maybe it was a combination, kind of felt like not as good, or like I don't know how to describe it, but I didn't really like the writing. Yeah, like probably because of that I didn't really feel drawn into the characters. I was just here for the plot, and for me characters is quite important in a story, so I need to like the characters to really love the book. So while I was reading the plot and things like that, I wasn't really like, oh my god, I ship them together or whatever. But I would say that the plot is good. It kind of reminds me of a K-drama, and maybe because of that as well, it feels like something that I've read about before, because it's like not a unique premise, right? Like you go to the afterworld and then you strike a deal and then you have to do something to be able to live again. It's been done many times in K-dramas. I'm not sure about books, but yeah. So I was here for the plot, but it didn't really wow me. So I was just trying to guess like what would happen at the end, and I kind of predicted parts of it, but there are parts of it that I wasn't able to predict. So overall, I gave it like a 3.5. I would definitely think that this is a good book to read if you are interested in the premise, because it's a unique premise, but also if you have already read or watched similar plots, then maybe it won't be so unique to you. But yeah, one last thing I want to say is that because she only has 10 days, it kind of feels like the romance was a little rushed. Like it suddenly came out of nowhere and then a lot of tropes were thrown in together. But yeah, overall, I guess you'll still like it if the premise sounds interesting to you. That's all of the books that I read. Let me get all of the books. Okay, so these are all the books that I read in order, and according to enjoyment, I will rearrange it now. If I placed them according to enjoyment, this is my ranking. So from most enjoyed to least enjoyed. And I just love romance books, man. Like, look at how aesthetic the covers are. So yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I also hope you got some recommendations to read romances this Valentine's Day, because it's all about romance, right? I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel to see more of such content. I hope you're having a great day or a great week wherever you're watching. Remember to stay hydrated, and I'll see you in my next video. Happy Valentine's Day!